Finesse fishing is, boy, it's probably one of the most misunderstood things, especially, I would say for a lot of the anglers in the south, the southeast part of the country. I think finesse fishing in a lot of parts of the world, in the west, up where you're at, over where I'm at in the northeast on the East Coast, finesse fishing is important. But in a lot of places, guys grow up power fishing, and especially in those power fishing areas of the world, I think there's a lot of myths based around finesse fishing, and here are probably four of the biggest. The first one is finesse fishing's no good in dirty water. Man, I got to tell you, that is such a super myth. I grew up over here in New Jersey, basically fishing the banks of the tidal Delaware River from when I was a kid till now. And the Delaware River in its entirety is a pretty stained fishery, and in a lot of places muddy. And I think one of the big misconceptions is that, when you see dirty, muddy water, from brown mud all the way to orange chocolate yoo-hoo, that finesse fishing is out of the picture, and that's false. Finesse fishing works equally as good in dirty water as it does obviously in clear water. And I think the key is that you've just got to alter your finesse presentation a little bit. And so, typically the more stain the water, the dirtier the water, the muddier the water. Finesse fishing is still important to me, but what I do is I really slow down and I really get more target specific. One of the true things in dirty water situations is the fish will get tighter to cover. They'll actually suck in closer to whatever they're relating to. So, in situations where you're finesse fishing, you just need to put the bait tighter and leave it there for a longer period of time. The other modification that I'll make is in color. I think, a lot of times in finesse fishing, people assume that color of the finesse baits are always translucent or clear, or these very colors that are almost see-through. So in muddy water, the only modification I do is I go to colors that are brighter, that stand out more, or have more contrast in that dirty water. I could tell you one of my favorite finesse colors when I'm fishing dirty water is straight black. And it's almost like the forgotten about color. But I love a black shaky worm. I love a little black finesse jig. A black finesse spinnerbait. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is you absolutely can finesse in dirty water. Second big misconception of finesse fishing is finesse fishing does not catch big fish. It's only for little fish and it's only for numbers. Gosh, that's the biggest misconception in the world. Give you two quick examples. The biggest bass I ever caught in my life weighed 14 pounds, 1 ounce. I caught it from Lake Amistad, practicing for the first elite event we ever fished there. And I caught that fish on a spinning rod with 10-pound tests on a weightless soft stick bait. Second example, last year at the Texas Toyota Bass Classic, Lake Conroe, I came in second place. And amassed, I can't remember what it is, over 4 days, but averaging over 20 pounds a day. Caught one fish over 7 pounds every day of the event, including one that was almost 10, a 9 3/4. And every one of those fish I weighed, all those big ones, all came on a little shaky head worm on 8 pound line, on 8 pound fluorocarbon. So it's absolutely, finesse fishing is absolutely a technique. To where you can catch big giant fish. It's not just for little fish. It's not just for numbers. It can catch giants. Third misconception on finesse fishing is finesse fishing only means fishing a little tiny worm. Finesse fishing only means fishing a little tiny whippy spinning rod. They're big misconceptions. I think one of the big things in finesse fishing is people look at it and they see it as this one generic type of fishing. But in finesse fishing, like in power fishing, there's a broad range of baits and there's a broad range of action rods and techniques that we're going to use to finesse fish. To give you a quick example, I've got a book out all about finesse fishing, and we've got 13 chapters, and pretty much every one of those chapters talks about a different finesse bait or different finesse technique. The thing to keep in mind in finesse fishing is that, you know, each bait, what you want to think about. So, to give you a quick rundown of some of those, a shaky worm, or a drop shot, or a flick shake, or a tail weighted French fry, or a floating worm, or a weightless stick bait, or a minnow bait. Any of those, the thing that I'm thinking about is the action of the bait. I'm thinking about the fall or the movement of that bait. And when you look at them, when you break them down, they're all different. And so again, just like in power fishing, just like, let's say in spinnerbait fishing, you know, you spinnerbait fish, you're picking blade colors, you're picking blade sizes. Do I use a willow for flash? Do I use an Indiana for in between, a Colorado for vibration? The same way we pick those power fishing baits, we're going to pick finesse baits. So finesse fishing is not just a little worm; it's a lot of baits. And the other thing is, it's not just a little whippy rod. I can tell you that there's four different actions of spinning rods that I normally carry in my boat, and I'll give you a rundown of them real quick. One is a 6.6 medium heavy action spinning rod. That's the rod that I love to use when I'm skipping around docks, and it's the rod I love to use on jig head applications. A 7 foot medium heavy action rod, the best all around rod there is. A little bit longer. It's perfect for flick shake. It's perfect for tail weighted French fry, stick bait. It's the best all around rod. A 6.9 medium, straight medium spinning rod. That's my drop shot rod. A lot more tip, a lot more give to that rod, a lot more flexibility. You're not driving the hook home. You're just kind of sweep setting the hook. And then finally, a real long spinning rod, a 7.4 spinning rod with a little bit more heavy action. It's a medium heavy, but it's almost closer to a heavy action rod. And that's for applications like those bigger baits, a long cast weightless minnow bait, a big weightless stick bait thrown in the bushes. Some of those applications we're using braid on a spinning rod. So it's not just about a little whippy rod. There's other rods. So that's the third one. And then, finally, I'd say the biggest misconception in finesse fishing is that I don't finesse fish because I always get birds nests in the spinning reel, and birds nests, or that line twist has to be a part of finesse fishing. And I wanted to end it with that one because that's a big one for me. You do not have to get line twists. Have I had line twists in the past? Absolutely. And I think everybody's has dealt with it at one time. They've seen it, but there are ways to finesse fish and use a spinning reel and use light line without getting line twist. And real quick, I'm going to give you the 4 techniques I use to stop line twist on a spinning reel when you're finesse fishing. First one's when you're putting on the line. So you go to your favorite store and you pick up a spool of line. You buy some Berkeley trilene fluorocarbon. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that as that line is coming off the filler spool, you want to make sure that the line is coming off counterclockwise, because as you reel that line in on your spinning reel, it's putting the line on clockwise. So you always want that line coming off of that filler spool counterclockwise. Second thing I do, as I'm bringing that line in, so now it's coming off of that filler spool counterclockwise, I'm trucking it in, I'm reeling it in. Before I reel it in, I'm going to use a silicone spray, and I don't spray the line, but I spray a cloth. I'll get a really soft cloth, something like you'd wax your car with, and I'll spray a silicone spray into that cloth. There's a lot of good silicone sprays on the market that are geared toward fishing. There's Real Line Magic. Kevin's got one. I'll be honest with you, I use generic silicone spray. You can go to Lowe's, a Home Depot, and you can buy just regular 3M silicone spray. I'll spray that into the cloth, and I'll reel the line through that cloth as I'm bringing it into the reel. And what that does, it helps a little bit with that memory, gets some of that kind of machine chalk off the line. So that's number 2. Number 3 is just had a brain fart. Wait a minute. Okay, so lines coming off counterclockwise. Okay, number 3. Number 3 is never, never, never overfill your spinning reel. And so my general rule of thumb is when I'm bringing that line in, I like to leave at a minimum an eighth of an inch of the rim of that spinning spool of the spool showing. I see way too many guys that buy this great expensive fluorocarbon line. They get so excited they're filling their reel up. They'll fill the reel too much and you never even see any of the rim of the spool. At a minimum, leave an eighth of an inch of that spool empty. In most cases, almost like a quarter of an inch. So don't overfill your spinning reel. And then finally, number four, and this is the big one, this is the kicker, is never close that bail on your spinning reel by turning the reel handle. It's funny because in pro-am events especially, I'll be up in the front and I'll have a co-angler in the back and we're finesse fishing and I hear him make a cast and I can hear that clink of him clicking, turning the handle and the handle making the bail click back. And I like cringe. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard, I'm like, ah, I turn around, I'm like, stop that. And, if you look, when you do that, if you use the reel handle to close that bail, every time you do it, it throws in a real little amount of slack into the spool. And so after 10 cast, after 50 cast, after 100 cast, before you know it, you've got a big amount of slack, and that's the beginning to a bird's nest. So my last rule, number 4, simple rule, is get in the habit that every time you cast your spinning reel, click the bail back by hand. So you're using your hand to click the bail back, and then make sure the line is under the roller and you're ready to fish. If you do those two things, it becomes second nature after a long time. So make your cast, click the bail over by hand, make sure the line's under the roller, and you're ready to fish. If you do those 4 things, I guarantee that you won't get bird's nest in your spinning reel, and you won't be afraid to finesse fish.